Hi folks, Robin here at Toadstool Tarot. I thought I'd come on today because there's been a little bit of pot stirring in the community lately, and I won't go into specifics about the channels or the personalities, but the things that it brings up, there are a few topics there that might be worth talking about or considering. So I've made some messy notes, and we'll see if I can handle this in a educational, diplomatic way. Who knows? First of all, one of the topics or issues that we might want to address is the whole idea of what YouTube is. It's social media, which means it's open to social interaction. YouTube is a system that gives everyone the chance to have their own channel for free. And I think one needs to consider, why would one want to do that? Ask yourself, if you want to make a channel, what's the reason for doing that? Do you have a reason? Maybe you want to be a star. Maybe you want to convey information that you think you have, or a point of view that others might not have. Maybe you want to educate. Maybe you want to educate yourself through the process of creating a YouTube channel. Maybe you want to just have fun because you see other people are having fun with it. There's a number of reasons for having a channel or creating a channel, but I think one needs to remember that unlike television channels, YouTube channels are open to interaction and feedback. So if I speak to you out there from my channel, I am likely going to get people responding in the comments below what I have to say to you. And that's sort of the plus and the minus attraction of what YouTube and social media is all about. You know, maybe you get the love from people, but you also get the hate from people. And you need to decide whether that's something you're willing to open yourself up to. It's sort of unfortunate that we're in a time where there's a lot of trolling. There's a lot of people who view things and communication and want to react to it in ways that are provocative, argumentative. Everyone's got their own thoughts or ideas about things, and sometimes they want to express them. Sometimes they want to hold their tongues and just watch and be entertained. You never quite know how what you say or do is going to be received. But I think in creating a channel, you need to ask yourself, am I ready for all that? Am I willing to have people come at me? There are both sides of the coin. You can say something out there that you might not think is provocative, but provokes someone, and you get hateful responses and issues, and you get people lining up on that side of the community, and then you get other people coming to your defense, and you get people lining up on that side of the community, and it becomes very divisive. You see two sides, two armies kind of lining up against one another and fighting. And some people legitimately are responding to what you say in a way that they feel, and some people just seem to want to stir the pot or jump on the bandwagon. And that's sort of, it's kind of difficult. It's an awkward position to be in. I hope that people that watch my videos are thinking for themselves and not just jumping on to support me or attack me. But I have to remember, I always have the opportunity, if I don't want to engage, maybe just don't do the video, or turn off the setting for comments on your videos so that you don't have people responding. Those are possibilities to every YouTuber who has a channel. So YouTube is free, yes, but it comes with certain costs. And it tends to create community because of the ability to interact with someone on screen via chat or via comments after the video is posted. And some people really like that it develops a community where you find like-minded people. You can make new friends and new enemies. You're able to engage and interact. If you're not making the video, you can also make yourself known, make yourself heard by what you're posting in your comments or in the chat. It's a two-way street in some regards. Now, when I started my channel, I hadn't previously considered doing one, but I noticed that there were more channels coming up that I related to or had a sense of wanting to interact with, and I had started collecting tarot. And my purpose for starting a channel initially was to be a sort of a shopper's helper, in that tarot decks that were available in shops could not be opened and investigated. They were shrink-wrapped in boxes, and very rarely did they have a sample copy that was open that you could check out all the cards. And so your only option was to take a chance and buy that deck and then find out at home, going through it, whether it was something that was going to be useful to you, whether you'd like it, whether you can engage with it. So I thought, well, this would be interesting if I can find some of the decks I'm looking for online, save myself some money by not taking a gamble or a risk on decks, by finding as much as I can about them before I see them. And I have kind of a history of doing this in other ways, in my past with vinyl and music. Couldn't hear an album before I bought it, so I would take a gamble on buying a record album just from the artwork on the cover, and then come home and find out it was something I didn't care for at all, or maybe heard one hit single on the radio and then the rest of the album I didn't like at all, or read a review in a magazine and then find out that my taste didn't really match the reviewer's taste. So for me, it was kind of a way of helping the community by sharing tarot card images with people. So if you look through my channel, you can see the bulk of it has been walkthroughs, flip-throughs, unboxings of tarot decks. And that was my original intention. I bought all the decks. There might have been one or two that were gifted to me by friends, but the bulk of them I bought. And I usually shared as objectively as I could the elements in a deck that I liked and the elements in a deck that I didn't like. So I felt like I was pretty open about it, and I was also ready to acknowledge that some things that I don't like in a deck, other people might love in a deck. You know that thing, one man's trash is another man's treasure. You never know. And I've also found that I tend to do shares when I initially get a deck, and I'm very excited about looking at the deck. And some of those opinions have changed over time. Some decks have fallen out of fashion with me, some I've rehomed, some I've discovered I can't work with. I just don't connect with them. And I maybe should do some revisitings of some of those decks I was initially so excited to share with people. But that's a kind of a different category, I think, because for me the idea was initially just to show you what the elements of a deck are, what the symbols or images are in there. And some people don't like walkthroughs because I'm sharing my opinions, which are subjective about the things I like or don't like in a deck. And to those people, I can say or can offer you, if you just want to use it as a guide for researching the looks of a deck, you're entirely welcome to turn my volume off and not listen to my thoughts or opinions at all. You can change the setting, the speed setting on the playback, and fly through. You can drag the time cursor or whatever it's called at the bottom of the screen and skip forward and look at a deck. I've done that with other people. Some of them I enjoy viewing each and every card. Some of them I don't like that kind of artwork. I'll skip altogether, or I'll just spot check a few cards to see, is this any better or not? Sometimes I'll listen to the person and see what they have to say and think, yeah, that's a good point, or I agree with that, or no, I don't agree with that. So there are a lot of options out there, and I found it's been kind of helpful to me to see other people do walkthroughs, and my having a channel just sort of expands on that. I try to find decks that other people are not doing walkthroughs of, or maybe people don't know too much about more eclectic decks. And I find that my tastes tend to run a little different than a lot of viewers. If you look at walkthrough channels, as time goes on, there's more and more people doing that. And you find mass market decks more and more being reviewed. And for me, it's less necessary to view them all. Sometimes you want to view 2 or 3 walkthroughs of the same deck just to get differing opinions on it, but you're seeing the same imagery although some camera work is sharper than other channels. There's a whole number of reasons why you watch or don't watch. But it's a little bit of give back through to the community by sharing, what I'm discovering. And it's been fun to get to know people and get to know that there actually is a community out there that interacts. And that comes with its own challenges over time. Some people say or do things that bother me, and when that happens, maybe the first impulse is, no, that wasn't right, or that wasn't nice, or I don't like the way they handled that, and I'm going to jump on there and tell them so. Tell them how to conduct their business. I've learned, or I am still learning, to take a pause, take a breath, sit back and decide, is that really necessary for me to tell somebody else off what I happen to think or feel? If it triggers me or bothers me, do I need to get on there and do something about it? Maybe emotionally it's upsetting, and maybe it's helpful for me to process those feelings, but I might suggest that if you can't just stop and think about it, count to 10, you can't get it out of your system that way, maybe journal a little bit, or if you have a channel, maybe create a YouTube video, but don't upload it. Look at it back, think about it, live with it a couple days, a couple weeks, decide, gee, have I gotten over what was bothering me, or does it still really need to be communicated? I've been making some notes, and I want to see if what I might have missed here. I think, there's a question that's come up about, Yeah, so when you have a community, there's, as I said, there can be trolling, there can be divisiveness, there can even develop us versus themism mentality, where you've got warring or battling factions over opinions and ideas. It's something worth thinking about. I have gotten to the point where I'll find myself in a mood in somebody else's chat where I disagree with someone, or whatever happens, I want to stir the pot and say something. And usually I'm pretty self-deprecating and silly, and I just kind of feel like we all are too thin-skinned and we all take things too seriously, and try to sort of lighten things up, put a little levity into the chat or my comments. And sometimes it amuses people, and sometimes people get really ticked off. You never quite know, just like comedy on stage, you never quite know how something's going to come off, how an audience is going to react. And it's all communication here in social media, so you hope that if you're on screen, your body language, your text in chats is going to come off, but sometimes tone is missed, sometimes sarcasm is missed, sometimes people just don't understand you or understand the way you're trying to deliver something, and I also wanted to say another point that was brought up is the idea about the proliferation of decks and the increase in costs of decks. And I think a lot of that kind of mirrors the proliferation or increase in channels since COVID, what happened when COVID came about, a lot of people got depressed. A lot of people needed somewhere to turn to. They discovered channels online discussing things that were in the self-help realm, and one of those was tarot, and people started to find out about tarot and how it might help them. They started buying tarot more and more, and then finding out, oh, you can create your own tarot, and not only that, you can market and sell it. And certainly over time, somebody in business discovers, oh, this is a market out here, an untapped market, a business, and let's make some money off of it. So they start mass producing more and more decks because we all want the new products, the bigger, flashier, better next year's model product. So, whereas you might just have one of those cheap old yellow box RWS decks, which is perfectly fine. Now you've got rare limited editions of independently produced decks that go for lots of money because it is a market, it is a business, and it costs to make those decks extra special, and we don't all have a lot of money to create a deck, even if we might want to. Maybe we want to make money off of it. That's another reason for a channel. Some people want to monetize and make money, make a living off of a channel, which I don't necessarily advise. I think it's far and few between the people that make big money by having a channel or creating a tarot deck. It's a big investment in time, and can be a big investment in money as well to get to that point. But what this has done is it's created this market of collectors. More decks, new decks, bigger, better, flashier decks. I want the decks. I want to collect decks. Well, why do I want that? I like flashy new things. I like bigger and better things. Or I am now part of a community that collects, and I want what the Joneses have. The grass looks greener on the other side of the fence. I need that deck too. I'm missing out. I've got fear of missing out. I'll be left behind in the dust by all the friends and people in my community if I don't buy those decks too. I want to be part of the crowd. So I'm generalizing. I'm being a little bit sarcastic and silly here, but these are potential reasons for people buying decks. And we don't all have enough money to buy all those decks we want. It's okay to want them. I'm not sure if it's okay to need them. You might just ask yourself, is it a question of want? Is it a question of need? Why am I having these feelings about having to own that deck? And look at my budget. Do I even have a budget? I know what it costs to live. I know what it costs to feed myself, house myself, clothe myself. Do I have a budget where I've set aside so much for each thing I need to live? And is a tarot deck something that I need to live? Or can I go about spiritual development or evolution through some other method that's cheap or even free? I mean, there are classes that you can pay lots of money to take to learn tarot, but there are also free classes on YouTube and lessons. You can learn from the free classes or from other people. It's the choices are all out there, and it's up to you. So YouTube is free for now. At some point, they might start charging, and then the whole thing will change. But short of having a laptop, internet access, a camera of some kind, or a phone, or an iPad or something, you can create your own channel. You can watch other channels. You can be involved. You can be interactive. You can be part of a community. So there are a number of points and issues here about collecting. Why do I collect? Why do I obsessively or compulsively collect? Why do I go against? Why do I work against my own interest? Do I have issues about collecting? Do I have a problem or not? Is it my business and nobody else's business what I want to do? How can I protect and take care of myself? How can I be a part of what I want or desire without injuring myself or others? Sometimes our sharing or excitement can be so great that you develop an enthusiasm through other people for them to want the same things. And we expand and help expand the market in our passion for these collectibles, whether intended or not. We ask, hey, do you have that deck? Or did you get this deck yet? You got to get this deck. Well, do you got to get this deck? You have to decide that. And you have to decide, is it you deciding, or are others deciding for you? Are you letting others decide for you? You have to figure these things out. Actually, tarot is a good way to help with that, too. You can do tarot spreads on why you're doing what you're doing. What do you need to do? What do you not need to do? Consider your situation. Consider the way forward. Are you taking your bread and milk money to buy tarot decks? Are you taking your rent money to do that? Money you don't have? Well, this is something I've been guilty of in my youth. When I was first working and making minimum wage, and then at some stage I actually landed a credit card, and wasn't that wonderful and exciting? And I started spending more than I had earned by using my credit card, because there were things I wanted and felt I needed, and I couldn't afford them on minimum wage. So here's my way. Why not? I got myself into a lot of trouble that way, and what I ended up having to do was go to my bank and consider a debt consolidation loan, because I had numerous cards and insurmountable bills. And it's one of the best things I ever did, actually. It's not fair what we get paid, minimum wage. Wages, the whole wage system is unfair or seems unfair. Our needs and wants and desires seem unfair. Why can't I have what my neighbor has? You don't have to spend the money out there on tarot. There are ways around it, free ways. If you can't find a cheap deck, you can buy a deck of cards from the local drugstore or grocery store or dime store for $5 probably or less. If you have access to a marking device and paper, you can create your own cards. A pair of scissors, cut up some rectangles and write on them and make your own deck of cards. That's virtually free. But you have to decide what you want and how you're going to go about getting it. You also have to decide or know what your limits are, when to stop, when to say, nope, I'm not going to watch this channel. I'm not going to listen to the voices. I'm going to take a step backwards for a while and not think about those things, or redirect my thoughts and interest elsewhere. Maybe go out in nature. Maybe don't interact so much with influencers. And then there's the question of what makes an influencer. You get caught up in appreciating a personality or what someone has to say or share. You get caught up in a community and you want to be part of it and you want to do it too. And those decks that you don't have enough money for, you feel like you need them. Well, do you? You need to stop and think about that. Can you manage that? Process how to deal with that. Journal about it. Write down some thoughts. Create a budget for yourself. Write that down. Figure it out. Can you afford one deck every 3 months? Make some wish list. Revisit walkthroughs. Do I still need that now that I can finally afford it? Put your wish list out there. Let somebody else gift these decks to you. I wouldn't say, I'm still not quite sure what influencers are, but once you have a channel and your numbers get up there, are you an influencer? Do you consider yourself an influencer? Don't fall into the realm of self-entitlement where you feel like, hey, I deserve to call myself an influencer because I am an influencer. Other people follow me and listen to me. They do what I suggest they might do. I'm helping to sell tarot. So I need to be given decks to review. I think that's great if people want to give you decks to review. I've even considered it myself and thought, gee, why are other people getting all these decks? Nobody's throwing decks at me to review. And some people feel they should be paid for the reviews. Okay, that's fine. If that's the way they feel. Some people feel like they are being paid by being given free decks. That's basically advertisement. Another point that's brought up is the notion of bias. We all have biases, even if we try to be subjective. But people that buy their own decks and review for free, their bias is in their taste for the deck. Hey, I spent money on this deck. I can say whatever I want about it. And if I'm excited about it, I'm going to share that. If I have issues with it, I'm going to share that too. If you're given free materials to review, you might have a bit more of a bias. And when I view channels like that, I appreciate that they tell me they were gifted the deck or a company gave them the deck. I might feel a little bit bitter they're getting decks I'm not getting, but I also keep in mind what's seems like a blessing can also be a curse. Are they feeling beholden to give a company a certain kind of review because the deck was gifted to them? I'll take those reviews with a grain of salt. Obviously, they're not going to be gifted the free decks if they bitch and moan about them all the way through. If they're card curmudgeons like me, maybe that's why I'm not getting decks, because I don't tend to give glowing reviews across the board of a deck. I'll find things in each and every deck that I like and don't like, and I'll tell you how I feel about it. But, if you're not giving a deck predominantly a good review, I can see where a company might not find that advantage to their marketing, and they might find that discouraging to new shoppers rather than promoting their products, and stop sending free decks. So I can feel also a sense of longing, a sense of bitterness, a sense of disappointment, frustration, all these things I felt when I had inadequate income to buy decks, and decks are going up and up and up, and then there's the question of the debate over, is a deck worth the price that's being asked for it? Why are the prices so high? Why are they making decks that I can no longer afford? Should they be allowed to do that? Now we're into business and marketing, and you really need to figure out, are you going to support what the market will allow? If something goes out of print, we know the prices go up. They become scarce, harder to find. It's more competitive to get those decks. You need to decide how much you're willing to spend of yourself, of your time and your money to get hold of those decks. I think a lot of these things are questions to really consider, not necessarily argue or debate others about, but for each of us on our own to stop and think about. What are our values? Where do we set priorities? How do we deal with that? How do we handle that? Just looking over my notes here. I think I've covered most things, but I want to suggest to some people that feel like they'd like to expand their spirituality through some tool, that there's more out there than tarot decks, cheap tarot decks, expensive tarot decks. If you can't find what you want online or in a shop or in a second-hand shop, there are other methods you can find through various channels even, or books through used bookstores, or trades online with people. If you don't want to work with decks, maybe you find another method. You can work with pendulums. You can create your own pendulum. All it takes is a piece of string and a weighted object, and you can do that. It doesn't have to be a fancy crystal or fancy metal weight created on a lathe or built in a mold and sold in stores. You can put an acorn on a thread, or tie up a stone on a string. You can, there's lots of things you can do. You can take jewelry. You could take a necklace you have, unchain one end, and use that. There are methods of working with, you can scry. Maybe you don't have a scrying crystal ball, or you don't have a scrying mirror or a stone. You can use a bowl of water. You can light a candle and scry into the flame. You can do bibliomancy. Do you have any books at home in your collection? Do you have nothing but a Bible? You can open it randomly. That's where the word bibliomancy comes from. Open a book, any book, randomly. Put your finger down and see how you relate to the phrase or the word that comes up. That prompts or stimulates your mind instinctively or inspirationally, intuitively. That's the word I'm looking for. I think a lot of spiritual study has to do with expanding or developing our intuition. And it's really all about communication with yourself, possibly with others, depending on how far you go. But going out in the world and being observant Look at things, look at nature, look at the way certain leaves fall, certain oil spills and puddles appear, or clouds in the sky. Learn to read things like beer foam on a glass, like I used to do when I would go to bars at happy hour. I also have gathered pebbles that I found out in nature, and I shake them up and cast them out on a surface, and then look at them and see which ones are bigger, which ones are smaller, which size or colors draw me to them, and where are they positioned in the layout. If you create a scenario in front of you of left is the past, right is the future, which ones are moving towards the future? Is there a cluster? Are they characters? Are people gathering around somebody moving forward? Are there loners lagging behind? Are there individuals saying, I'm not going with the crowd, I'm going this direction, or I need to pause right here, let everybody else do what they want, this is where I am right now, here in time. You can collect sticks and cut them up and wood burn images on them, or take a marker and burn images on them and make oghams. You can make your own runes. There's so many different ways to deal with expanding or investigating your spiritual investigations. Whether you want to buy pre-made things, whether you can afford to do that, or whether you want to make or create your own. The community has been good for sharing ideas on ways to go about these things. You don't have to just collect and buy and put yourself in debt for what everybody else wants that you have. Get creative. There's also automatic writing. There's so many things you can do. There's a whole world, a whole universe of things out there for you. But in closing, I guess I would say, take care of yourself. Think about what you're doing costs you. Things that seem free aren't always free. They have costs. They have effects. They affect other things. Things you say and do affect other people. Again, stop to think about what you're saying and what you're doing and what you're pursuing. Be a thoughtful individual. Be a kind individual. Strive for kindness. Don't give in to the prevalence of meanness for meanness' sake, for argumentation's sake, in social media. Do what you can to help other people. Try to lift people up. Don't push them down. Everybody's got frustrations. Everybody's got bitterness. Everybody's got things that bug the hell out of them. They don't always need to be put out there in the community. Many years ago, I traveled to California. I was sick of what was happening in New York City, and I found, boy, people can be so nasty here out on the streets. They could be so mean, and it feels like unpleasantness is contagious. I got to get away from here. I got to get out of here. And I went on a vacation with a friend. I went along with him to California, to San Francisco, actually, for a few days. And I was walking down some street and feeling in a kind of a grumpy, nasty mood, and feeling like, I don't want to interact with people, and I don't want to deal with strangers. And this little old white-haired lady came walking up the street past me. She looked at me and smiled and said, "Good morning." And I felt this glow inside. It's like, hey, this stranger is interacting with me in a pleasant way. She doesn't know me from Adam, but she's spreading good vibrations. No pun intended, Beach Boys. And it made me pause and think, gee, maybe it's not just bad feelings that are contagious. Maybe good feelings are contagious too. And if you can put that out there, it can spread and turn things around. And we're in an age now where we need more and more of that. There's something going on in social media, in the regular media, in politics, in the 24-hour news channels. There are things going on all the time that just seem to be there, determined to bring us and drag us down and turn us against one another and help make us feel entitled to be mean, be unkind. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up here. I think I've covered most of what I wanted to cover. And what I have to say isn't joining one side or another in an argument about community, but I hope it's helpful in having everybody who is involved in the community be more aware that because of the nature of the way it's set up, community tends to develop and evolve, and you can help it evolve or devolve depending on your own actions and your own involvement with it. So if you're going to do things, stop and think why you're doing them, if you're doing them for the right reasons, if they're doing them to help you or others, if the costs that are involved in you expressing yourself is worth it to your psyche or your pocketbook. These are things I don't think people generally think about. I think they look and they say, oh, that looks like fun. I mean, I can do that too. I want to do that too. I want to join in. I want to be a part of that. But I'd say, just take a minute and think about what you're getting into. I want to encourage everybody to be happy in being themselves, but think about what it means to get there and how to go about it. And now I'm probably just starting to be redundant if I wasn't 10, 20 minutes ago. So I'm going to let you all go. Hope I leave you thinking on the positive side, and I'll see you soon.